Good morning. Thank you for coming out. I'm Dominic Severi. I'm the Senior Project Manager for this town of Stoughton. I work for Compass Project Management. With me is Matteo Battista, Senior Project Manager for Consigli Construction. Matteo will probably have the best part of the show. I'm just going to do a quick overview of where we are, where we've been. As you know, June of last year we broke ground. We started by coming into the from Pearl Street into the job site, bringing in utilities. We're about 90% of utilities. We still have some utilities as far as fiber coming in. But everything is on the job site right now. We broke ground. As you remember, we tore up the football field and started the track, pulling that up. Foundations went through, steel coming up, as you saw, and now getting just fast forwarding ahead. You can see we're enclosing the building. All our steel is in place. Our concrete is being placed. I think we have a couple of more pours on the first level that'll complete it. If you take a walk around the connector road down towards the middle school, you'll see the brick masonry is going up on what we call the academic wings. Those two buildings near the middle school are where the majority of your classrooms will be located. And we're turning the corner coming towards Adams Street, closing in with concrete masonry units, the auditorium and the gymnasium. Matteo will probably give you a little, yeah, I have a pointer there too, Matteo, right beside your breakfast there. In the next few months, we'll be finishing up the floors. Elevators will be installed. We're already putting up sheetrock, and Matteo will show you kind of a before and after, what they call a 360 of a classroom. In a couple of more weeks, we'll actually have painters here on the job site. In about 3 weeks, we'll start to be installing the temporary heat for the building. We have to climatize the building for the winter so that when we're putting in finished products, that it's at the proper temperature. And you'll see if you walk down that connector road, you'll see the windows are going in now too. You'll see the staircases are in place now. Mechanical equipment in the ceiling is going in. The electrical is going in. So there's been a lot of activities. We've come from last June having about 25 men on the job site to almost 150 men in the next week or so. We are working the last couple of months, 6 days a week, to make up for some of the rain that we've had. It's been tough going for the exterior work. But we are overall on schedule, on time, to have the students come in September of 2019, and we were way within our budget right now. Very proud of that accomplishment, all due to the help of a project team, Consigli, and DRA, our architect, who might be here, but he'll only be arm candy for this particular presentation. Just quickly, as the winter comes in, you may see, because as we are working, we may need to tent the building so that we can continue to do the work on the outside with climatized weather, so that we're not affected by snowstorms or freezes. Like last year, the winter was terrible with the low cold temperatures. So that will be something that Consigli Construction will be scheduling. Trying to think of anything else that it's really. Oh yeah, we have this week. We are starting to put in, right over the atrium. There's a skylight. We can pull up a little. I think you'll have something similar. But as you walk into the main entrance, and you can see from some of these renderings we are here. As you walk into the main entrance, there'll be a skylight that will cross over the entire main entrance, giving natural light between the buildings. So if you have this, what you see in white is really where the roof work has been done. And in between that area is the skylight, and that's the main corridor. So the white area here, those two box buildings, is your classroom buildings. Then the center, you'll see, and I apologize, in the gray areas is the gymnasium and the auditorium. So in between, so like you have an academic side and you have a public side. So in between is like Main Street. So that will have natural light from an atrium, clear glass atrium, or what they call Caliwall, but through it. So it's a very nice design. A lot of natural light in this building. Every single classroom has natural light. The way they situated courtyards to bring that natural light. I will have to say on this particular project, we have a lot of follow-up inspections with Consigli to make sure that everything is airtight, weather-tight, et cetera. So we've done a lot of work making sure that the building is sound as we are enclosing that building. So I want to, I'm going to turn it over to Matteo. He's going to, I don't know if you want to start with the classroom.
Yeah.
Right,
So I'll, as Don mentioned, so as part of like our daily quality assurance, we take daily photos around the building. So we've started using a software called Struction Site, which actually allows us to take 3D photos. And the nice thing is that then that allows us to kind of really see very easily, because they're all geolocated within the building, allows us to see the progress that's been done. So here, this is actually in one of the classrooms on B third floor. So B is the building that is kind of on the northmost side. So here we have on the right side from July, and then on the left side, this is August. So you can kind of see the general flow of construction. So here on the right side, this wall has been framed out, right? After framing, you have the sheathing, which is this gray structure, this gray surface. Once the sheathing is applied, here you see AVB, so that is the air vapor barrier. That is what keeps the building actually weather tight. And then after the AVB is when you start to see the facade, right? So that is the metal panel, that is the precast, that is the brick, whatever sort of outside structure you have. And so we can kind of just take a look around this room. And again, the right side is July. So here we have a bunch of, you can kind of see like the tops of the buildings of all the rooms have been placed. So that is the top of the drywall to allow all the MEPs to be put into place. And I'm gonna actually switch this to kind of a more recent photo to kind of show you what it looks like now.
And when Matteo's talking about MEPs, he means mechanical, electrical, and plumbing.
Right. So now this is the room as it exists, kind of most currently. I think this was taken on Tuesday. But now, so all of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing rough-ins have happened in the wall. The walls have all been insulated, and so now we're actually drywalling and boarding and taping. So that's what you see on this right-hand side, is now the walls are being kind of finished up. If we move to the second tab, I think this is one of the teacher workstations. So again, this is here October 10th. This is August, about a month ago. So here, rough-in was continuing to take place. MEPs were being put into place, and now it's to the point where all the in-wall inspections have been passed, and we're ready to finish up the walls. We're installing the soffits. You have the rough-ins for the overhead lights, and it's a much more finished space. Now this third tab, this is actually the auditorium. So this is, if we look on this, this is kind of the south in between of here's your gym and here's your auditorium. So we're kind of on the southeast corner of the gymnasium. So when it's a little hard to see, it's kind of dark here, but so this was in August, and then this is in October. So here we were preparing to place the actual tiers of the auditorium. So you see a lot of rebar, so reinforcing steel and mesh being put into place. These are actually rigs workers putting into place the forms that actually will allow us to pour the concrete and set them, set the concrete in place. So here you have the tiers have already been placed. The kind of slab on grade has been more finely graded. You have a little bit more of your your exterior CMU block being placed. Here you see this white, it's a cementatious fireproofing, right? So all the beams in the building are fireproofed to protect from fire and heat. Just kind of take a spin. That's the gymnasium, which here in August you could kind of still see into that room. And now on the right side you see that those walls have started to come up, those interior CMU walls. This photo here is actually on the side most adjacent to this existing high school. So this is on the east side of the B, kind of northeast academic wing and A1, or A2 rather, which is the gymnasium. So here again you can see the sequence of work, right? So if we look here on the right, which is again in August, you have the structure in place. Now in September, you have the steel studs that kind of infill the structural skeleton of the building. And then you have sheathing continuing on the surfaces that have already been framed out. After the sheathing, you see the AVB. And then on this right-hand side, you start to see that once we have the AVB in place, now you start to go in with the insulation and then the facade. So in this case, we have a couple different bands of different color brick. And actually, we also see here the punched windows that we've started to install. And we have a test for them coming up. And then this last one. And this is on the west side of the school. So this is looking at
By the west elementary fields.
Yep. So we're looking at C building here, and we're looking at A1. So again, you just kind of see the normal sequencing of the construction. Here, this photo is actually in July 26th. We had still roof towers, right? So that was what allowed us and the workers access onto all the different floors before there were actual finished stairs. But if you look on this photo here in September, that stair tower no longer exists because we have a few of the final stairs in place, and we can use those to get up and down and bring materials in and out. But as Dom said, everything's going very well, right? We are on budget. We are on time. The quality's been very good, and it's been very safe, right? So we have 140 workers on site at any given point. We'll probably peak at around 200, and we're approaching close to 500 days without a lost time incident, which, you know, on a job of this scale and of this complexity, it's a testament to the hard work that the workers are putting in and the diligence in terms of, you know, making sure that everything is done right and done safely. So that's about it. If there's any questions, or if someone wanted to see something else, I
just want to mention too what Matteo was talking about, safety, and safety is important. This is a large project, but if you've noticed that on every one of his slides, how the rooms are pretty clean as far as the floor. There's no trip hazards. Matteo's crew and his field people are very good about a morning walk, an afternoon walk, making sure that everything is safe for the tradespersons working in the job. But yes, we're open for questions now.
You want to talk about the sequence of finishing the project? Not to get the school open, not about the other stuff.
In the process, we've been meeting, you know, we're building a building, construction is construction. Let me grab that, and I'll speak from the mic, so we won't get people from, as you know, we're, Stoughton Media Access is filming this, and we also have a Facebook stream going. So I've done 2 high schools in my past, and the construction is always, you know, the paramount in getting that work done so the students can be there by, you know, September of 2019. But as of last month, I met with the entire faculty to start to talk about, getting ready for the move. It's important that that's all coordinated, because as soon as I can turn this building over, Mateo's crew will be into this building, working on abatement of this building and starting to tear the building down sometime probably August of 2019, prior to the students coming into the new building. That discussion involved with the faculty was to start to look to cull material that they really don't need to bring over to the new school. I'll be giving them moving boxes, instructions, bubble wrap. We're going through all that right now. That'll be first week in November. We'll have boxes to them and bins for material that needs to be disposed. We'll have dumpsters out there, shredders, things like that. After the holidays, I'll do it all over again. In that sequence, we're also talking to, and that started in the summer, the new furniture and the new equipment. So that's been reviewed first by each individual instructor and teacher, brought up to their department head. They've looked it over, brought up to administration and Principal Miller. We worked with our furniture and equipment consultant, go through that, make the list, take a look at the budget, send it back for cuts because we were over budget originally. We're reviewing that, so we're getting the timeline for that to go out for pricing sometime in November. Then we have information technology, which obviously is important for every high school. We are consistently working on that, but sometime in January we'll be wrapping that up to go also out to bid. In the meantime, we're also doing, as part of that move management, we'll be reaching out to moving companies for pricing to get ready for that move in June after the school year ends, and that's all dependent of snow days, hopefully not too many. So there's going to be kind of an ebb and flow as far as how we're getting this ready for Consigli to take over, but there's coordination being done by Consigli. Our hope is that we can turn it around within a week and a half from the end of the school year to no later than the second week in July, and that where Consigli can come in. And we have done an abatement survey to see where hazardous materials is in this building once it's cleaned out. We've also reached out to companies on regards to surplus furniture, because there's going to be a point where we'll have all new, and anything that's brought over from here is taken care of. Then what's remaining, there are companies there that repurpose classroom furnitures, especially now. We're thinking about what happened in North Carolina and down the panhandles in Florida, where schools are completely wiped out. So we're situating ourselves to take care of that too as part of this turnover process. So in the end of the school year too, we will start doing instructions on the new equipment that's in the building. We'll probably do another instructional period sometime in September, because the summer people forget. But as an example, teaching how to use the auditorium equipment, the lighting, the audio system, how the curtains go back and forth, etc. I'll talk to the science department about their equipment, because everything is new and upgraded, and we'll probably do it again in September. There's building management systems for the maintenance department to follow as far as heating and cooling. We'll also, obviously, we'll be walking with them the mechanical, electrical, and any plumbing fixtures involved, and actually take them on a tour of all that equipment. Again, probably do it again in September once everything is up and running. We are here for the following year, obviously, because we're going to be taking down the building and putting in the track and soccer field and running track, and then this area here will eventually become the football stadium, and then the tennis courts will be done as the last thing. We are coordinating also how the opening happens with the school and how the traffic flow will happen, and that we're already starting to talk about that, which is a year away. So there's a lot of things that go on. The architects and the contractor will work in conjunction, sort of as a rolling punch list. They'll look at, as classrooms are ready to be turned over, they'll look through it. It won't be a last minute. So there's a systematic way of how we work in the building, and it will start with the academic wings, work our way around, and come around to the auditorium and the gymnasium. Add anything?
Yeah, just in regards to the maintenance, right? So we'll work closely with Joel and his staff to identify who in the school needs to be trained. We'll make sure that.
Here.
Does this work?
Yeah, this is.
All right. And all those trainings will be taped, right? So you'll have a reference to go back to if there are additional questions. And of course, there'll be lots of owner's manuals, both digital and hard copies to allow us to kind of refer back to how to maintain the building, you know, because that's going to be a 50-year project as opposed to the construction. So that's it.
We can. I want to just say one thing. I'm almost now 35 years in construction. This is the most solid building I've ever built. I've never built a building that has as much reinforcement in concrete as this particular building. So this building, they say this is a 50-year building. This is a 100-year building as far as I'm concerned. And when they take it down, they'll be cursing us, whoever takes the building down. But I'm open to any questions that you have. Yes, sir.
Has the building community talked to Consigli about, I know people wanted bricks from the old building, you know, purchasing bricks or something like that?
Yeah, our fear about that, and I think we've addressed it in a building committee meeting, we actually talked about it, is that there is hazardous material behind it. We could cull out 50 or so, you know, but it's always risk, you know, when you're encapsulating areas and things like that. So what happens is you might get, you know, some exposure, and it's, yeah, every single school that I've done, they've talked about that. But we have talked about an idea of, in the midst of all the moving, once we get the moves done and once we clean out some of the surplus furniture, there'll be what they called it, and it was successfully done where I worked in Marshfield, a turning off the light ceremony, so the school will be open to the public to take one last walk around. And we may have sort of either an auction or a rummage sale that hasn't been finalized, where there might be some school banners, you know, theatrical equipment. It just, some of that will be happening.
West Bridgewater.
Similar.
My friends grew up in West Bridgewater, and they had like a final walk.
There's a final walk, yeah. We call it the turning off the light ceremony. Once that's done, that's the time I'm turning it over, and it's up to Matteo and his group.
Yeah, and once Consigli takes over, we're abating, we're demolishing, you know, on a large scale. And
The abatement 4 to 5 weeks, maybe less. Demolition about 6 weeks.
yeah,
I'm always aggressive, and Matteo looks
that is
at me
pretty
like-
aggressive. Yeah, I mean, it'll probably take about 3 months in total, but
It will start towards the middle school and head this way.
And the reason why I asked about the bricks, because I was on the Stoughton Alumni Committee. We talked about using some of the bricks for a walkway. And, you know, something from the old school, you know, can be incorporated into the new school grounds.
Yeah. Let me just speak about things that are being incorporated. There's some edifices on the existing high school from the 1920s that we're saving, like the Citizens of Stoughton, and I forget there was another edifice up there. It's been a while since I looked. There is obviously monuments and materials here, and plaques, that are going to be brought over, or if they're not brought over because they're kind of falling apart, Consigli's crew is going to actually refurbish them or replicate them.
My last question is, that road that leads down to the middle school, that's going to disappear?
It's going to disappear. There'll be more of a walkway there. My opinion, if there's a real emergency, if ambulance has to get there, probably can be. But if you look at the plans and the plans that we were passing out, and there's extras underneath the mic there, the way it's set up is that once, and this is the tricky part, the first couple of months will be tricky as far as drop off and pick up, and we're working with Principal Miller on that. Pick up and drop off with parents will be right here, Adams Street lot. And in the back, the buses will come in and they'll go from dropping off the high school students straight to the middle school to drop off. So,
And what we've done in the past, I mean, we have logistic plans set up for the transition period. But we'll, once those are finalized, we'll provide them to Joel and Julie and the school committee, and they typically send that as part of a backpack package.
yes, sir.
As far as parking is concerned, are we gaining more?
Yes, you're gaining more parking. Now, in the very beginning, until this building comes down, you'll have enough parking as you do right now. You'll pick up more parking once this building is down and their road work is completed. So overall, I can't remember the number, but you will have gained, is it 50, Joel? Yeah, I thought it was 50 or 60 more parking spots. So, and the flow should be better too than what you have now as a flow. Deb? Yes.
So when will the public be able to get tours of the new building?
Okay.
After we turn it over.
No, July, but let me interject, okay? So we're talking to administration right now, the district administration, about the ribbon cutting ceremony, so that will be prior to the students actually coming in. There are a couple of things that we're floating right now. As part of that ribbon cutting ceremony, Dr. Rizzi and Principal Miller and I spoke about that once the ceremony happens, that in the afternoon that there'll be tours of the building prior to the students coming in. What we did in another high school was we took some of the juniors, got them familiar with the school, gave them an idea of how to do the tours. They would take 20 members of the community on a tour. We went from 1:30 to about 8 o'clock for a tour. So we even had a guest book. People signed in, so that was kind of cool. So that's the idea, is that probably middle of August, we will be doing that. I don't know if I'm doing this right, sorry. So that's the idea right now, Deb. We haven't finalized it. I am working with Dr. Rizzi's admin, Mary Shea, and so we already started getting who's going to speak. These ceremonies will have, as I always say, people that you hadn't seen since we had the groundbreaking. So they'll be there, and the rest of us will be there. So, yes, sir. No. The faculty will have tours earlier. We'll do that. They'll be away for the summer, so if we can, we'll set something up. We've had a couple of tours with the teachers already in the way the building is right now, and we are having a tour this Wednesday with the principals of all the other schools. And then we'll be discussing the idea of repurposing some of this furniture that's remaining in the other schools. So that's part of our plan as recycling too.
I have to, I'm sorry. I have to, I drive by every day, and I look every day, and I'm trying to, I'm saying, did you say it's going to be finished in July?
Oh, yeah.
I'm finding it hard to believe that it's going to be done in July, because it looks like there's a lot of work.
No. Well,
There's a lot. Yep.
there is a lot of work,
It'll
yeah.
be finished in July.
There'll be a lot of people here too. Yeah. It is interesting. Once the frame goes up, I always find that interesting. People say, oh, the frame is up and the steel is up, and wow, that's great. And then there's this feel of what's going on now. But there's a lot going on inside the building. And it's work concurrent. There's work inside and there's work outside, and it all comes together. I feel very comfortable. As I said, and then I'm not saying this because Mateo gives me a schedule and says we're going to be there on time, but my experience, I feel very comfortable. I honestly feel that Consigli's turnover time is mid-July. I would say by end of May, early June, we'll be pretty tight. We'll be 99%. So I feel very comfortable about students. I don't have any hesitation in saying the students will be in September of 2019.
Well, like I said, I watched it
Yeah.
in the beginning, because I drive by every day, and it's just, when I heard July, I was like, okay,
No, it's understandable. I mean, it's even though we're the activities, no matter how much planning you have, the activities will start picking really up, say January, and then there's a run to the finish line. But very organized group at Consigli, a lot of oversight, very organized group, the DRA, the architects. So we feel pretty comfortable.
Is the whole building air conditioned?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Excuse me. You said earlier that the school was 100-year instead of 50-year?
Well, what I meant is that everybody talks about building. Pardon me?
Is that an accident?
No, no. There's always this. Every time there's a school being built, somebody says it's a 50-year building. There'll be 3 generations going through this building, and et cetera. These buildings, because of the oversight of the state, Mass Building Authority, and the town's now hiring people like myself who are OPMs. These buildings are much, much stronger and better built than they were back in the 60s. So, I just feel like if it's not a high school in 50 years, it'll be an administrative building or I was going to say library, but libraries are passé now. They're a media center, so I don't know what that is in the future. I won't be around for 50 years from now, but something will be done with this building.
And the other thing is, I live up the street and I see the concrete trucks go by. Do you have any idea how many trucks?
Oh, that's,
A lot.
there's a lot. How many yards do you think?
Oh, wow. Maybe 6,000, and you have a truck every 10.
This is like 10 yards in a truck.
Yeah, a lot of trucks.
So 6,000 yards, and every truck's 10 yards, a little less than 10 yards.
Yep.
Yeah. Plus, we also
Site work.
there's site work that's coming, and the other trucks that we have is grout, and we grout all those concrete masonry blocks. And if you've seen as you drive by, as we build like 6 courses of concrete block, there's rebar in every block. We pour concrete in the cells of each block. We tie the rebar from the top steel to bottom steel and to the columns side to side. So there's quite a bit of heavy-duty structure there. So. Gene?
A question that came up on Facebook last week, in terms of the gym floor, similar to the bricks, is that a possibility of giving up pieces of wood like the old Boston Garden, or have you considered that? Because a number of people have asked, especially if there's going to be an alumni basketball game.
I'd have to defer to administration on that. That's not unusual, but again, I don't know how the floor was put in, when it was put in back, it was the mid-60s, I believe, that area. You'd be surprised at the adhesives that were used in the 60s that are nasty. So we'll see how it comes up, and and believe me, the demolition contractors are not noted for being, delicate when they remove things. So if
Yeah, I mean, any kind of salvage that would take place would have to take place prior to turnover to consignee. Once we start abatement and demolition, we're not going to recover
Right.
items, right? So
Yeah.
we've worked and identified those plaques and the kind of memorial items, and those will be removed with a separate crew prior to abatement and demolition. But once that process happens, it's all coming down in a pile.
But I'll speak to that with the administration. It's a good idea. That's probably something easier than the brick. I mean, but I know that a project that was close to me, I wasn't involved in it. When they lifted up the gym floor, they found that they, for some reason, used mercury on the concrete. I don't know why, but no one knew why, but it was there. So we'll see. As we'll probably have to do a test, but I don't want to cut out anything until the season's over, obviously. Yes, sir?
Okay, I'm all on board right now with this project. My question is, I was speaking to one youth who's going to graduate in a couple of years from a new building, and I asked him, well, you're having heat and air conditioning. He says, we're not going to have air conditioning in the classrooms. Is that a truth or a false?
False.
False rumor? Okay.
Federal government said they had to have.
No, it's all mechanical equipment is for climatize your building.
The whole building itself would be.
Yeah, I mean, there's fluctuations, obviously, where we have controls, so like the auditorium will be controlled separately, so you'll be on a low setting when it's not occupied, and when it's fully occupied, it'll be a higher setting. Same thing with the gymnasium, same thing
I
there.
do not believe that we would take and put a building up like this in this day and age
No.
and not put
Yeah.
air conditioning, and go with the old reliable window. So,
No, well, you have windows still, too. You do have, every classroom will have an operable window, so you can enjoy the spring or fall weather, but that will wreak havoc sometimes on the mechanical equipment because it's adjusting up and down. It's, this is state of the art, but we try to also include fresh air. We bring in fresh air, it circulates, there's so many times an hour, I'm not sure what I'm not an engineer, but yeah, this is, fully climate.
See us get hit
No.
in 5 years with, we've got to put air conditioning in.
No, it's fully climatized, and we're not talking about residential units up there. Those are massive units, so, yeah. And if you've seen the cranes earlier, they've been picking a few of these units and putting them on the curbs, so. And then what happens is up on the roof, you see these barriers that kind of blend into the sky, and that's hiding all the equipment up there, so. Also, we have photovoltaic array that's going in for energy efficiency too. Won't take care of the entire high school, it takes care of a percentage of it, but it's part of the energy program. That we are going to be LEED certified, silver, I believe, is our goal. We are close to gold, which is great, but that's our design is LEED silver. So.
Okay, I just didn't want to see us get hit with a bill, in 10 years.
No, we're trying to do everything we can when I leave this job site that you don't have to really touch anything. Now, the future is, and we talk about this, Joel Harding here is the facilities director here. We do have some information about programs that there's a life cycle cost for every piece of equipment. So that information is given to the town, and it's up to the town to make sure that, as an example, a chiller for your air conditioning is usually 20 years is the life cycle. That's when you should replace it. An elevator is 40 years. That's when you should replace. Although I've seen elevators that are 100 years old, still working. So so we'll give the town of Stoughton, the district, and their operations facilities group kind of a guideline on capital projects in the future, so they can set that up as they go along in town budgets that come in the future. Yes, sir.
Are you also involved in the superintendent's office?
Yes, I'm involved in that. Yeah, we're about a month ahead of schedule. We're ready to turn it over.
Just out of curiosity, how is this hill going to affect the construction of the stadium?
I'm sorry.
How is this hill going to affect the construction of the football stadium?
It's actually it's going to be sort of a natural bowl we have. So yeah, there's some work to be done out there, but as far as the transition from Pearl Street as the road comes into the main entrance, so there'll be some rework, but
It'll be graded similar to how we did the original, the main building. Yeah, it'll take huge machines.
yeah. Where it's kind of interesting, and I think you may see it in one of the renderings. It'll show Pearl Street, and there's a pocket park in front of the bleachers. So the bleachers are below, and there's some bleachers coming up above. So I guess the home side will be Pearl Street. So that's where most of the seating is, and on the opposite side it'll be a lower set of bleachers. Yes.
So I know this question might put you on the spot a little bit, but early on I had heard that because the building is so energy efficient, that the savings on heating per year for the high school, despite the increased size, could be like a couple $100,000.
I warn you to say that it's not savings, okay? Everybody thinks now we have a more efficient building. It is an efficient building, but you have more systems in place now, too. So, and it's by code. So there'll probably be an increase as far as the budget goes for utilities, because you have, and now I can't compare it to the old school. The school, I know, I've taken walks through it. I know that there are issues with the fenestration, the windows leaking. Water comes into the building. I'm sure the heat fluctuates back and forth. People are opening and closing windows when it's the middle of the winter because it's overheating. But I always tell people you don't count on it being a lower consumption of utilities. Because of the more equipment you have, there is probably going to be a little more cost, and percentage-wise cost. So you're not saving on utilities. You just have more state-of-the-art and also more energy-efficient units. So, and it's how, and basically it's how the operation director adjusts those things. Not put Joel on the spot, but you know, whoever is going to be the operations director, how they adjust. You also have a building that you're probably going to use more than you did for this building. The building may be open from 6 in the morning to 11 at night with programs. You might have more opportunities to reach out to some college programs to bring them in. There might be more programs in the future. I'm not speaking for the administration to have outsource for the public to rent spaces. I'm not sure how that will work, but I've seen it in other schools. So.
And if I can just hit on that a little bit. So obviously the cost to construct the building is significant, but the cost over the life of the building to actually operate the utilities and keep them efficient is much more, right? And so DRA and the construction team has worked hard to make sure that you guys have a very efficient building, and Consigli started to do some work in terms of making sure that once we turn over the building that it remains efficient. So we have a few programs that we'll probably discuss to just make sure that, you know, these things are being analyzed and corrected if they start to shift from that baseline that we've constructed, to make sure that you guys are paying the same amount in terms of, you know, from that first year and on.
Yeah, the first year is always the tricky year because older buildings, you know, you in October, early November, you start to put the heat on, you know, and you make that adjustment, and you have some days that are too warm, and you flush away. So the shoulder seasons that we have, you will see how the adjustments are made. We have a state-of-the-art, what they call building management system, which will read not just the equipment, but the utility usages. And so it's you know, it would be nice if it was a net zero between what you're paying for utilities here and there, but I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that it's less, more, or even. We don't know yet until the building goes through a full year operation.
So just to follow up on that, how far beyond when the school actually opens and the students come in will there be oversight of the systems by Consigli or yourselves to make sure everything, you know, basically the warranty?
Yeah, and Matteo can talk. In every construction project, you have specifications. Every specification has that piece of equipment or unit. Every specification that details a piece of equipment or a unit has a warranty and a checklist too. In some cases, it's 1 year. Other cases, it's 3 years. It depends on the equipment. The nice thing about this particular project, and unfortunately in some ways, Consigli winds up becoming sort of a maintenance group too, or you know, quick action group. While they're working on the fields here, we'll have Consigli here for the next year plus. So if anything comes up that first year, they can mobilize and come in and walk it through with the maintenance department too, or the teachers too. They may have the distiller in the science room is not working quite right, so we can go up there quickly with the plumber and double check. But the responsibility is Consigli's. They'll call me first. I'll call Consigli. Consigli will send the right person over if it's a warranty issue, and we'll deal with it that first year. But there is also callbacks, and we'll go through that as part of the instructions and training for the maintenance department. There'll be a catalog of items that will be handed over, hard copy. I know people don't, guys like me like hard copies. And then there'll be also a thumb drive that everything electronically will be on there. You can pull it up, you can explode it, and when I say explode it, you can spread the equipment around so you know the units that are in there, the pieces that are involved. So there's quite a bit going on here. Again, this is a 21st century learning facility, and it has 21st century equipment. So
maybe it would be helpful if you explained to everybody about the commissioning process.
Okay. Truthfully, as I said earlier, that we do a lot of testing here. The state of Massachusetts assigns us a commissioning agent. The commissioning agent has responsibilities for the building envelope and the equipment. That's the simplest things. There are a couple of other things too. So as in the process right now, we're going through, as we close up facades, where the windows are in place and the brick is in place. And as Matteo was talking about the air vapor barrier, this coming Monday, we actually have this thing called the dynamic water test, which will throw hurricane wind, rain driven right at that facade and window unit. So, you know, it's a 160 mile an hour drive.
Yeah, it looks like an Everglade fan.
Yeah, it looks just like an Everglade fan when you see it, and we'll be testing the side of the facade. We have also another part of our commissioning is the building envelope, which was, we were just talking about the air vapor barrier, but we're also talking about the roofing system. So part of the roofing, as an example, we have a commissioning agent who makes his recommendations on what he wants to see up there. We have a company that works directly for Compass, actually, comes around and actually comes, and he was there yesterday walking the roof to see how the roof installation is going, and he writes a report, and we do what we call it a deficiency report, but it actually just highlights areas that we should go back to and double check. And then I like to do is what we call an infrared test. So sometime in the spring, when the roof is tight, we'll do an infrared test on that. We'll share that with the commissioning agent. The infrared test will show the color zones that maybe there's a leak there or a pinhole leak, and we can tell by the infrared. So we'll do, and there's multiple levels here of roofs, so we'll have jumping around. All in all, by the time we turn the building over, the building will be commissioned. Part of that, also the commissioning, is the interior of the building. We look at the mechanical systems, the air conditioning, the plumbing systems too, as far as pressure, how that goes. Even the little bit of the science where the sinks go into a neutralization tank, and we just make sure that we're not crisscrossing pipes. Everything's going to the right place. So that will be done. So by the time we're around May of 2019, we'll be finalizing that, and we'll also be finalizing the balancing of the building so that every classroom is at 72 degrees and nothing is fluctuating up and down. And we're checking the building management systems to make sure that works. And to follow up on the question that you had, Deb, and others will have, is it's required by the state that 10 months after they move in, we do another commissioning round. So there's another follow-up. And then as part of my job, I send that in, and there's a whole process of closing out this project. And that's one of the parts of the project that is part of my responsibility with Consigli and the architect, is to make sure that we do that 10-month commissioning, get that approved and sent in, and then there's a whole process of audits that go on from there. So there's a lot of follow-up even after the kids and the faculty are moved in here. Any others? Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.